All right, so for this game, we have a couple of things going on that we need to keep track of here. So first of all, we have these two plows that are going to be plowing these 6 streets, and we also care about the sequence. We care about the order in which those streets are plowed. Now, essentially, that means that we're going to be trying to figure out the sequence of 3 positions for 2 different plows. If you weren't sure about how to set this game up, one thing that you could have done is that you could have taken a look at the exclusion question where LSAT does have a nice setup for us, and it's a workable setup. This is something that you can definitely use. So we will set it up accordingly. We essentially care about the sequence of 3 positions, 1, 2, and 3, for each of 2 plows. So we'll use a second tier to keep track of plows 1 and plow 2. Now from there, the elements themselves, we have G, H, J, K, L, and M. And from there, I suppose let's take a look at the rules. So the first rule tells us that whichever of the plows does main would have to do it before they do any other street. Now this is a bit of a convoluted way to word a much simpler rule, which is really just to say that whichever way you go, main has to be done first. So whoever is doing main, M is going to be in position 1. And we can even leave a reminder on the board here that says that M is going to have to be in the first position. Next, the same snowplow has to do both G and H. Now, this one's a bit of an awkward one to symbolize, but personally what I would do is something like G and H. They kind of have to be in the same horizontal plane. Now remember, the way that you symbolize the rule, as long as you can make sense of it, that's the most important thing. Next, if the same plow does both J and L, then we'd have to have the L before the J. So again, we can say something like, if we have J and L, kind of again on the same horizontal plane, then we'll have to have the L before the J. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that J and L actually have to be together, right? So they could be separated, and if they are on different plows, then this rule just doesn't apply. But if they are together, then we definitely know that we'll have to have the L before the J. Lastly, we are told that plow 1 does K, so K goes to plow number 1, and I suppose we can also leave a reminder over here that K is going to be in this first row. Now, in terms of the game, it's worth noting that, the second rule is kind of significant, right? The fact that we're going to have G and H together, that means that whatever row you put it into, it's going to knock out 2 of 3 spaces right there, right? And we already know that K conveniently happens to be with plow number 1. So if you put G and H up top, then that would lock out the first plow completely, and that would force everybody else to go down below. So in fact, M would have to go over here, and then L and J will be together, so they'll go in that sequence 2 and 3. So there's a lot that can be done. Now, if you put G and H in plow number 2, that's probably a little bit less influential, but still, you'd still be knocking out 2 of 3 spaces. That's something. So what we should do, is exhaust this game based on the GH kind of rule. So we can say the GH, either they're going to go together in plow number 1, or they're going to go together in plow number 2, and we can try to figure out what will happen in each scenario. Now, in the first one, if we have G and H in plow number 1, we already said that's kind of a big deal, right? So we'll have to have K, G, and H between those 3 positions. There's not much on sequence, to be fair, so there's nothing to suggest anything about which one goes earlier or later, but it would mean that with plow number 2, we're going to have an M here, and then since we have L and J in the same row, then we're going to have them in that sequence with L before J, so that's kind of nice. Now, if G and H, on the other hand, if they happen to go into the second plow, it's not quite as significant. They can kind of go anywhere between these positions. But to be fair, what we could do at this stage is we could further sub-exhaust this based on M, because M kind of plays a similar role. If we have M, we have to have M on 1 somewhere. If we have M over here, then G and H are just going to lock out these 2 spots, and then everybody else goes to the top, which is significant. On the other hand, if you put M up top, then you'd also have K over there somewhere, which might also be kind of influential as well. So what we can do here is we can sub-exhaust this game further. We can say, if we have G and H on plow number 2, there's 2 different plays. Either we're going to have M on 1, or we're going to have M on plow 2. Now, in both of these scenarios, again, G and H, just to be clear, are on plow number 2. Now, in the second template, or I guess the third template now, over here, let's say, G and H are going to lock out the last 2 positions, which is great. And then in plow 1, we just have K, J, and L. And since J and L are together again, then we'll have to have L before J. So we can say something like, we'll have to have K / L before J. So the K can still shuffle back and forth. We don't have certainty there, but we still have to have the L before the J. Now, in the top template, we're a little bit more open, right? So we're going to have K in one of these 2 positions. In plow 2, we'll still have to have a G or an H, but I guess L and J are the leftovers now. Now, first of all, I guess that means that L and J will have to be separated in this template, right? And they could still go in plow 1 or plow 2. They could go either way. So we can even leave ourselves a reminder here. We can say that you'll have to have an L or a J kind of flipping between plow 1 and plow 2. And in terms of the actual sequence, this template is almost completely flexible. All of these guys can move back and forth. So essentially, yeah, we have 3 major plays for this game. Let's see what we can do with the questions. Question number 7 says what could be the complete set of the game. Now, as usual for the exclusion question, we do this by the original set of rules. So rule number 1, M had to go first no matter what. Going through the answer choices, so A looks okay, B looks okay. C, however, does not have M on first, so we can get rid of that. Answer choice D, we have M, and on E we have M on first as well, so that's good. Next, G and H have to be in the same snowplow. Let's go. Answer choice A, G and H are together. B, they are separated. We can get rid of answer choice B. C, we don't care about. D has them together. E has them together, so we're still good. Next, if we have J and L together, we have to have them in sequence L before J. Let's take a look. Answer choice A, we have J and L together, but they're out of order, so we can get rid of A. Answer choice D has them together with L before J, so we're good. And E has them together L before J, so we're good. Lastly, K has to go to plow number 1, so D looks okay. E, however, has K on the wrong plow. So the best answer for question number 7 becomes D. And as usual, I suppose let's kind of plug that into the board. So we have LKJ, and then we have MGH. Let's see what we can do with the rest of these. So we have a pretty good exhaustion. So you know what? Let's just do these as they come. Question number 8. If L is the second street for plow number 1, well, if L is the second street for the first plow, first of all, the first template is not in the game anymore, right? Because L is on the wrong plow. It's plow 2. So if L is the second street for plow 1, we would be either in template B, where we could have had an L in this position over here, or in template C, where we could have had an L in this position here. Now, we could try to play out the full implications of what happens if L is in that position, but let's see what we can do, because the thing is, we might be able to just use our exhaustions and just run with that. We just kind of have to do this a bit mentally, and we have to remember that for the sake of this question, we're going to have L in this position here, and then we're going to have L in this position here. For the record, here would mean that L is before J, and then K would go into 1. And then here, if L is over here, then K would have to go into the last position. But yeah, let's see what we can do with that. The question asks, each of these could be true, except we're looking for the one that cannot be true. Answer choice A, G is the first street for plow number 2. Now, that could, you'll notice, happen in this template, which is functional, because we could have had G over here, the first street for plow number 2. So answer choice A is out. B, H is the first street for plow number 1. Could we do that? And whoa, no, that doesn't work, because we know that H has to be on plow number 2 in both of these templates. So there's no way for H to be the first street for plow number 1. H can't be with plow 1 at all. The best answer for question number 8 then is B. For the record, though, just in case, let's take a quick look at the rest. C, J is the first street for plow number 2. Could we do J as the first street for plow number 2? And yeah, because in this template over here, If the L is over there, then yeah, the J could have gone over here as the counterpart of the LJ split. So that would have easily been okay. Answer choice D, K is the first street for plow number 1. And over here, that definitely could have happened. So D is out. And E, M is the first street for plow number 1. And yeah, in this template, that easily could have happened. So the only one that couldn't happen is answer choice B for question number 8. Next, question number 9. Which of the following cannot be true? Let's take a look. A, G is the first street for plow 2. So could G be plow 2's first street? Well, yeah, in this scenario, in this template over here, G could have been on plow 2 as number 1. So that easily could have worked. Answer choice B, G is the third street for plow 2. Same thing. In this template, G easily could have been here, or even in this template, G could have been there. So that could have happened. Answer choice C, J is the first street for plow number 1. Could we have J be the first for number 1? And actually, no, you'll notice that never really happens, right? Because here, J can't go into plow number 1 at all. Here, it's already busy with M. And here, J has to go after L, so that wouldn't have worked either. So the best answer choice for question number 9 then is C. For the record, though, let's take a quick look at the other ones. D, J is the second street for plow number 1. Could we have J be the second street for plow 1? And yes, in this template, we could have had J after L, and then K would have shuffled over there. So that would have been okay. Answer choice A, K is the third street for plow number 1. And yeah, easy. Over here, we could have had these guys shuffle back and forth. So K could have gone as the third street for plow number 1. Best answer for question number 9, once again, is C. Next, question 10. How many streets are there, any one of which could be the third street for plow number 2? And this is where these exhaustions really shine. I mean, to be fair, they actually helped with the other 2 questions as well. But for this question, well, we've seen J go into plow 2 for the third street. We've seen L potentially go there as well. And we could have had either G or H for this scenario, or actually even in this scenario as well. So it looks like the complete list is J, L, G, and H. Any one of those guys could have gone into the third street of plow number 2. The best answer is D. There are 4 different streets that could have gone there. Next, question number 11. If H is the second street for plow number 1, well, if H is the second street for plow number 1, that actually forces us into template A, you'll notice, right? Because template B and C, H is on plow number 2, so that's out of the question. So if H is the second street for plow number 1, we're stuck in this template, and we know H would go in the middle, and then K and G would just shuffle back and forth between 1 and 3. Now the question asks which of the following could be false. These can be always a little bit tricky, but remember, if one of the answer choices is going to be something that could be false, in other words, that means that the other choices are going to be things that must be true. So we're looking for the one answer choice that doesn't have to be true. Answer choice A, G goes to plow number 1, and yeah, in this template, G would go into the first plow, so that had to be true, that couldn't be false. Next, J goes to plow number 2, and yeah, J definitely went to the second plow, that couldn't be false, it had to be true. Answer choice C, K is the third street for plow number 1. Now that you'll notice, that didn't have to be true. If H goes over here, then K and G could still split. They can go either way. So K didn't have to be the third street of plow number 1. That didn't have to be true, so that could have been false. Answer choice C arguably is viable for this question. Let's keep going just in case though. Answer choice D, Lime is the second street for plow 2. That definitely had to be true, so that could not have been false. And E, M is the first street for plow 2, and yes, that definitely had to be true. That could not have been false. Best answer for question number 11 is C. Lastly, question 12. Now this one it's another rule substitution question, but it's an especially painful one. But let's see what we can do. The question asks us, what would replace the rule that says that G and H are going to have to be in the same plow? So we're trying to replace this rule. Just as a bit of a reminder, if we're looking to replace a rule, there are basically 2 parameters here. We're looking for something that always had to be true this entire time, and something that, if it was true, would ensure that those guys are going to be together. Failing either one of those parameters disqualifies the answer outright. Answer choice A. Let's take a look. The plow that does main also does G. So do M and G have to be on the same plow? And you'll notice that never had to be true, because in this scenario, for example, we could have separated them. Also here in this template, we could have separated them. So since this answer choice never had to be true in the first place, this wouldn't be a viable answer. It would go too far. Next, answer choice B. If plow 1 does main, then K has to go into 2 or 3 for plow number 1. Now, looking back, I mean, I suppose that actually definitely has to be true, doesn't it? Because if plow 1 did main, then main would go into the first position of plow number 1. And then K, since K is always in plow number 1, it would have to go into either positions 2 or 3, right? So anytime you have main for plow number 1, then yeah, it's true that it would force K into the second or third street for that first plow. So this definitely had to be true. That meets one of our parameters. The other question, though, is does it get the job done? Does it ensure that G and H will be in the same plow? Now, one thing that should kind of strike you about this answer choice is that it doesn't quite seem to have much to do with G and H. It doesn't seem to have much of an impact on G and H. But we can actually take this a bit of a step further. Now, this is a little bit of a hack, but it's worth noting that answer choice B couldn't possibly be a viable answer choice here. Because what answer choice B is doing is it's effectively just giving us a logical consequence of something that we already knew. In other words, the reason that answer choice B always had to be true is because we knew that M had to go first, and because we knew that K had to go into the first plow. So if you put M into that first plow, then K would be stuck in either 2 or 3. But that doesn't actually add anything that we didn't already know. This answer choice B, is literally a redundancy. It's giving us something that we would have known regardless of this rule that we're trying to replace. We would have been able to derive answer choice B as a logical consequence of this first rule and the last rule, which means if this answer choice doesn't actually add anything, it's just a redundancy from those 2 other rules, then this can't do anything for us. This can't possibly have an impact because it's something that we already knew in the first place. Arguably, that is a good enough reason to get rid of answer choice B, and that kind of saves you a little bit of time here. Recognizing that it's just a logical consequence of 2 rules that we already knew otherwise, and the fact that it can't possibly add anything to the game, kind of speeds through this a little bit. So, next. Answer choice C. If J is cleared by the same snowplow as L, then plow 2 would have to do both G and H. Now, this answer choice, well, actually, this never had to be true, did it? Because if J and L were together, then G and H didn't have to go to plow 2. If L and J were together, that could have allowed for this scenario, for example, where G and H were in plow number 1. So if answer choice C, if this never had to be true in the first place, then yeah, that's a good enough reason to get rid of it. Next, answer choice D. J is cleared by the same snowplow as L if and only if plow 2 does hickory. So first of all, is that true? Is it true that J and L were together if and only if plow 2 did hickory? Actually, no, it never had to be true, because you'll notice that, for example, in this scenario, L and J could have been together despite hickory going in with plow number 1. In other words, it's not true that J and L were together only if plow 2 did hickory, right? L and J could have been together even if plow 1 did hickory as well. So that arguably would have been a good enough reason to get rid of answer choice D, since that never had to be true. Now, by process of elimination, and if you were a little bit tight for time, it wouldn't be entirely unreasonable to kind of take a quick look at E, see if it seems to work, and then kind of run with it. But let's get into the details. Let's talk about answer choice E. J is cleared by the same snowplow as L if and only if plow 2 does main. Now both answer choices D and E, they have a lot going on here. So first of all, it's worth noting that the if and only if, it essentially creates a biconditional relationship. It tells you that essentially if plow 2 did main, then J and L would have to be together. and also that it's the only way that they can be together, that in order for J and L to be together, plow 2 would need to clear main. Now, the first step, let's talk about whether this actually had to be true. Did it have to be true that J and L are together if and only if plow 2 did main? And you'll notice that that is the case. So anytime that main went into plow number 2, so template A and template C, then L and J were together in both of those instances. And moreover, you'll notice that that's the only time that L and J were together, because in the one case where M went to plow number 1, we actually ended up having to separate L and J. So this is true that J and L were together if and only if M went to plow number 2. But the real question now is, does this get the job done? Does this ensure that G and H are going to be in the same row? And it seems disconnected, to be fair, right? Because they don't really touch on either one of them. But let's talk this through. So according to answer choice E, first of all, any time that we see plow 2 doing main, we would have to have L and J together. The thing is, though, if plow number 2 does main, let's actually kind of do this on a blank board. If plow number 2 did main, then according to this answer choice, L and J would be together, but they would be together either over here in these two positions, but then G and H would be stuck together, so that would force them to go in the same row, or alternatively, L and J would go somewhere in plow number 1, but then they would have to go there with K because K is also in plow number 1. So you would have L, J, and K in some capacity, and that would still force G and H together over to here. So this answer choice would prove that anytime you have M in plow number 2, then G and H will be together. But we still have to worry about what happens if main is not in plow number 2. So in other words, what if M was in plow number 1? Well, the thing is, if M was in plow number 1, we know that according to this rule, J and L would not be together because they can only be together if M goes to plow number 2. So if M goes to plow number 1, you'll have to separate J and L between the two different rows. But then notice what happens. You would have to have M over here. K would have to go into one of these two positions because K is always in plow number 1. And then since we have to separate L and J, the one of the two will also be in plow number 1. So plow number 1 will have to have M, you'll have to have K somewhere here, and you'll have to have one of L or J somewhere here as well, which means this becomes full, and that would force both G and H to go into plow number 2. So this gets the job done. This ensures that no matter what, G and H are going to be together with, well, yeah, they'll just be together. Best answer choice to question number 12 is E.